This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Good morning, Sunday morning. If it's Sunday, it must be the altar of BARD. How are you, Gary?
I'm great, Mark. How are you?
Fantastic. What a day. What a day. We got quite a few stories to talk about this week.
We do? What's been up?
Last week, a lot of people liked when I gave you kind of the curator title. So I'm going to let you curate today and talk about what you want. Although it's hard not to start with the ex-president and the vacating of the special master out of the 11th Circuit. For those who aren't in the weeds, the special circuit, Judge Cannon had installed a special master after the search at Mar-a-Lago. Here is the order that came from the 11th Circuit. Gary, you do this very well, so I'll let you read.
The law is clear. We cannot write a rule that allows any subject of a search warrant to block government investigations after the execution of the warrant, nor can we write a rule that allows only former presidents to do so. Either approach would be a radical reordering of our case law, limiting the federal court's involvement in criminal investigations, and both would violate bedrock separations of powers limitations. Accordingly, we agree with the government that the district court improperly exercised equitable jurisdiction, and that dismissal of the entire proceeding is required. The district court improperly exercised equitable jurisdiction in this case. For that reason, we vacate the September 5th order on appeal and remand with instructions for the court to dismiss the underlying civil action.
There's a term we use in the law called a bench slap. That's kind of a bench.
Yeah, I mean that the wording in that particular screenshot there is in my family, we used to talk about a strongly worded letter. You know, where anyone who crosses us, we're going to write a strongly worded letter, sternly worded letter. That's one right there, I would say, in legal terms.
So if you're doing a autopsy on this thing, I think what happened is the original filings were tethered to the idea of a special master in a search of an attorney. So those who may remember, legal eagles will remember that in Michael Cohen's office, who was the president's personal lawyer, they were able to convince the judge out of, I think it was the Southern District, to appoint a special master. A lot of that paperwork and a lot of that reasoning was used in the original filing here. And I think that the district court judge had adopted some of that reasoning. Traditionally, the search warrant and everything the fruits of the search warrant are challenged when and if there is a criminal filing. What the special master process does, especially in attorney-client, sometimes in physician-patient situations, is a special master, which, by the way, it's not so much a creature of federal court as it is in state courts. In California, for instance, there's a whole statutory lineup of what you can do, can't do within 72 hours, and how you approach it when you're putting a special master in after a search warrant covered under 1524 of the Penal Code here in California. But the federal court has traditionally not had a whole lot of how should I say, embrace of that statutory scheme. It's only happened basically in the Trump era with some limited historical exceptions. Well, the 11th Circuit wasn't buying what the Trump team was selling. So now the only kind of remedy is for them to see if the Supreme Court will jump in, which I wouldn't call it zero, but it's a fairly slim chance. But there is a shot that they could create a doctrine of a more limited special master kind of scheme for Trump to take a hold of.
Well, the Supreme Court hasn't been doing him any big favors lately. They just kind of slapped him their own way this past week, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. On the tax case, he's been fighting for years on his tax returns, where there is a privilege. Clearly, there's what's called a taxpayer's privilege. he was sued by the House, and the House, interestingly, even though the Democrats no longer control the House was able, talk about kind of a conflation of both the legislative and the judicial and the executive. You've got all three branches doing this dance. You've got Trump, who's no longer in office at the executive. You've got the House, which is now flipped as of basically a month ago, or less when you talk about counting the votes. And then you've got the Supreme Court weighing in on that kind of tension between the two. They finally got their hands on the tax returns. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens on that as well, because all of that is changing.
And if you had to posit a guess, given the fact that the House has changed hands, is, I guess, two-part question, which would be, does anything worth talking about come of this? And if so, how long does it take before we get there? Because I would have to imagine that his taxes are thorough and complex, and it will take some time to get through.
Yeah, and if you believe the New York Times leaks of the taxes previously, and anybody who's in the weeds as to what's happening up in New York with the prosecution of the Trump organization, you combine those two things, I think it's a very heavy slog for somebody to point out anything that hasn't been pointed out before. So, yeah. I don't think it's going to happen in the terms of Congress. Clearly, however, the Manhattan DA's office has got their teeth into something. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And we'll obviously report on that and talk about that next Tuesday.
Absolutely. All right. What do you want to do next, Mark?
Well, I said you're the curator today. It's Sunday, and you're the curator. Let's finish off with one more story.
All right. Well, I would say that the only other story worth talking about is how Matt Taibbi has become the most fortunate person in America, how his Substack is got to be one of the biggest things in the world right now. And it's just fascinating how Elon Musk chose Matt to release the Twitter files. I'm sure you've been following this, and I
have. I will tell you, however, we talked about this on the big show. And we were actually prognosticating. Is it a 3 or is it a 8 or a 9? Where do you put it?
I think that that's in the eye of the beholder. In terms of, for me, it's maybe a 3 or a 4, but I'm in the weeds on this stuff. I don't know if people are necessarily following these stories the way that we are. I didn't personally find anything in the first release, the first 44 tweets or so. And there's apparently a round 2 coming tonight as we record Sunday evening. But I didn't find anything in there that was earth shattering. How about you?
I was going to say the same thing. And we had explained, if you go back to the big show, I had explained at least that the only time this would, to me, an 8 or a 9 was going to be if you could show governmental interference. The problem with that is remember, the Biden campaign is not a governmental entity. Biden campaign is challenging the governmental entity, which was Trump. So you would have to believe that Trump was doing something with Twitter in real time, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense since he was out there talking about Hunter's laptop. And that was what made me a little hesitant. Now, as you say, if today's dump has something on it that shows post-election, then you may have something. But until then, I don't even know that I'd say it rises to a 3.
Yeah, I would say, if anything, the emails where the Biden administration or the Trump administration are making direct requests about specific tweets being brought down, and then you're seeing replies from Twitter employees that say handled, that's the most salacious thing. And that doesn't even necessarily seem like the craziest thing, because they're not talking about taking down a whole account. They're saying, here are specific tweets that we've seen that we think you guys. Basically what they're saying is, hey, have your content teams check these things that we think violate your terms. And if they do, then, so be it. So,
and by the way, they can also do a document dump. This is a common practice in the entertainment industry. In the entertainment industry, you will see PR people say, okay, I've got to contact the Twitter. I'm going to take this one down because the artist or the artist 5 and 10% club is upset about it. So, I mean, it's that like I say, it's not exactly breaking news. I'm willing to stand corrected tonight when the others dump, and I'm sure you'll text me something if it's there.
I absolutely will. But I go back to the beginning of this, where I do think Matt Taibbi is benefiting more than anyone involved. I mean, by my count, when I first saw that Elon tweeted or retweeted rather Matt Taibbi's tweet, I quickly clicked on his account to see what his follower count was, and I don't know how fast I got there from when Elon tweeted, but at the time I checked, it was around a little under 700,000. And when I checked this morning, it's 1.2 million. And as somebody who makes their money by going directly to the people and having them subscribe to his Substack, wow, that's talk about great advertising.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. I know you've got the heart out.
I do. I have the heart out for once. So not to take your nickname, but thank you very much for your time this morning, Mark. And we'll be back with Adam for his thoughts on the dump on Tuesday.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.